the Supreme Court has ruled that a temporary restraining order put on Donald Trump's freeze of foreign aid can go into effect in a 5-4 decision where the Democrats were joined by Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett to say that Trump overstepped his bounds in freezing foreign aid, which was largely including U.S. aid. This has caused a ton of chaos since Trump did it. The lack of clarity in the freeze, including like thinking that there was going to be waivers so that some of the money could still get through, but nobody being able to contact anybody at the State Department to see if they were actually allowed to access and buy the resources that they have done for so long, has meant that a lot of programs fighting AIDS, fighting starvation across the world, fighting other diseases in children.
There's a tracker online that tracks the number of people who have contracted or died from AIDS since the ending of the PEPFAR program. And I think the people who have died that didn't need to die is in like the 35,000 range right now.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah, and that's the real world effects of this.
Yeah.
And so these nonprofit groups that were supposed to get the funding went to a DC district court and said that they are illegally taking these funds and putting them behind barriers and not appropriating it the way that Congress has directed them to be appropriated.
Yes. And so, but basically what the district court judge said that Trump couldn't stop the foreign aid payments. The Supreme Court solidified it, confirmed it in their decision. But the Supreme Court also said the district court had to be more specific about its reasoning for why Trump couldn't do it. Because basically, the Trump administration said that this is just going to be a 90-day pause on the funding while we assess whether the foreign aid meets the administration's goals specifically, and it's aligned. So because they're framing it not as a hard stop and that they're never going to pay out the money, that's where the district court judge is going to have to go back and say, no, this pause is equivalent to the executive branch not spending money that Congress allocated for the government to spend in a specific way. And so then you're going to go and get into questions like the Impoundment Act of 1973, I believe, and whether that's constitutional or not, which is something that the Trump administration has had on its radar.
I mean, the Trump administration has blatantly said that Trump's budget office has said Donald Trump ran on a campaign saying that the Impoundment Control Act is unconstitutional and we are going to act as such.
Yeah, and the Impoundment Control Act, if you don't know, is just the law that Congress put into place in the 70s that says, okay, the president cannot spend less money than Congress allocates for the president to spend for certain objectives.
There is a way to go about doing it, right? They allow for something called rescissions. So like if the president wants to spend less money, he can give the explanation to Congress. Okay. Congress will have 45 days to vote on it. And then if it's approved by simple majorities in both the Senate and the House, then the rescission is passed.
Got it.
So there is a way to do this. And congressional Republicans like Rand Paul and other senators are telling Elon Musk, like, go through the process. They're trying to encourage him. They're like, come on, let's make it law. Let's make it for real. Yeah. Let's do it. Come on.
You have a Republican Congress.
Yeah. Just come right here, buddy. Yeah. But Trump's in king mode right now. But the Supreme Court said, no, you're not a king yet. Right.
Yeah.
And Justice Alito was pissed.
Yeah.
Justice Alito was so mad. He wrote a dissent for an emergency order, which is kind of uncommon. You don't normally write opinions or dissents when it comes to emergency orders on the shadow docket like this. But now he writes his opinion. He says he's stunned. And it's just ridiculous.
He says it's essentially like a one district court judge unilaterally deciding whether the federal government
can spend taxpayer dollars.
$2 billion worth of taxpayer money. And I read that and I just thought, no, it's not.
It's just such bullshit.
It's just the judge deciding that Congress said that the president had to spend the money that way.
Yes.
Which is exactly how it's supposed to work.
That's what the judges do. That's what judicial review is, buddy.
Yeah.
And I thought he was the biggest supporter of judicial review. But, he's not. It's all a power game. It's all powers. Laws are fake.